Once feared by many, this warrior alien woman was now begging a human to choose her. The galaxy had many names for Carvella, and none of them were kind. On border worlds, mothers warned their children to sleep early if her fleets were rumored nearby. Traders changed routes at the smallest whisper of her mark. Military academies studied her battles as lessons in what not to face. She was known as the Iron Huntress, a warrior alien woman shaped by endless war, taller than most of her kind, her armored frame marked by old scars that never fully faded. Her species valued strength above all else, and Carvella had become the greatest proof of that belief. She had never lost a campaign. She had never retreated. She had never begged, until now. But the galaxy did not know that yet. On the edge of neutral space floated the conquered spire, a massive station built as a place for peace talks. It was old, patched together from many species designs and protected by strict laws. No weapons, no armies, no threats, only words. The arrival of Carvella's ship sent shockwaves through the station. Alarms did not sound, but fear spread faster than any warning system. The vessel was smaller than her war flagships, plain in design and unarmed. That fact alone confused the watchers. Inside the docking bay, guards from many worlds stood frozen as the ramp lowered. Carvella stepped out alone. She wore simple armor, ceremonial rather than battle-ready. No blades, no shock field, no command staff. Her dark eyes scanned the room, alert but calm. For the first time in her life, she felt exposed. She ignored the stares and moved forward with steady steps. Far above, in a quiet observation corridor, Elias Rowan adjusted his badge and tried to slow his breathing. Elias was human, average in height, average in build, and completely out of place among diplomats and admirals. He was not a soldier. He was not a politician. He worked logistics, supply chains, transport schedules, resource balance. He had been sent because humans were new to the wider galaxy, and someone decided that calm minds were better than proud ones. When he heard that Carvella herself had arrived, Elias felt a chill run through him. He had read the reports. Everyone had. Entire pages filled with casualty numbers, strategic brilliance, and cold decisions. She was described as unstoppable, emotionless, and cruel by necessity. No one ever mentioned her voice, her posture, or her eyes, until now. As she entered the main assembly hall, Elias looked up and met her gaze across the room. Time seemed to pause for both of them. Carvella had faced armies without fear, but something about the human unsettled her. He did not shrink away. He did not stare in awe or hatred. He simply looked at her as if she were a person instead of a legend. The moment passed quickly. She turned away and took her assigned place. The council session began with tense formalities. Species representatives spoke carefully, measuring every word. Old conflicts hovered like ghosts. Carvella remained silent, listening, her hands resting calmly at her sides. Whispers moved through the hall. Why is she here? What does she want? Is this a trap? Elias listened too, but his attention kept drifting back to her. He noticed how still she sat, how she did not interrupt or threaten. This was not the monster from the reports. When it was finally her turn to speak, the chamber grew silent. "I did not come to demand," Carvella said, her voice deep but controlled. "I came to ask." The word echoed, ask. Many delegates shifted uncomfortably. Asking was not something conquerors did. "My people are bound by an old path," she continued. "A path of war that never ends. I have walked it longer than most. I am tired." That confession struck harder than any threat. "I seek a different future," she said, "but I cannot take it alone." Murmurs spread through the hall. Some laughed quietly. Others looked angry. A few looked afraid. The session ended without resolution. Delegates left in groups, voices low and sharp. Carvella rose and walked toward a quiet corridor, her thoughts heavy. She did not notice the shadow following her. Elias had been told to return to his quarters, but something pulled him after her. Maybe curiosity, maybe instinct. He kept his distance, unsure what he would even say. He did not get the chance. A sudden burst of energy lit the corridor. A hidden device activated, aimed directly at Carvella. It was not lethal by design, but powerful enough to disable even her. Before she could react, Elias moved. He did not think about strategy or danger. He stepped forward, placing himself between her and the device, arms raised in pure reflex. The blast struck. Pain tore through Elias' body as he hit the floor. Systems flared, alarms screamed, and security forces rushed in. The device shut down and the attackers fled into the station's maze. Carvella stood frozen. A human had shielded her. She knelt beside Elias, ignoring the guards' weapons pointed at her. Her hands hovered uncertainly, unsure how to help. His breathing was shallow, his face pale, but his eyes were open. "Why?" she asked softly. Elias managed a weak smile. "Because no one deserves to be attacked for trying to change." Medical teams arrived and rushed him away. For the first time since her early youth, Carvella felt something break inside her chest. Not pain, not rage, but fear. Fear of losing a path she had only just seen. That night, she stood alone in her assigned chamber, staring out at the stars. Memories of battles replayed in her mind, but they felt distant now. All she could see was a human standing in front of her without armor, without orders. Her people believed strength was measured by what you could destroy. Humans, it seemed, measured it differently. And somewhere deep within, Carvella realized the truth she had never spoken aloud. The ancient law she lived under would soon demand a choice. Not from her, but from him. Elias Rowan woke slowly, pulled back into awareness by a steady beeping sound. At first he thought he was still dreaming. The ceiling above him was white and curved, glowing softly. The air smelled clean, almost sharp. He tried to move and felt a dull ache spread through his body. "Easy," a calm voice said. Elias turned his head slightly. A medical officer from one of the neutral species stood beside his bed, long fingers adjusting a display. "You took a strong energy hit. You're lucky." "Lucky," Elias repeated weakly. His throat felt dry. Did she get hurt?" The officer paused, clearly surprised. The warrior? No, she was unharmed. Elias closed his eyes, relief washing over him. What he did not see was the tall figure standing silently at the far side of the room. Carvella watched from the shadows, her arms folded behind her back in formal posture. She had been there since he was brought in, refusing to leave even when guards suggested it might be safer elsewhere. She ignored them all. This was not fear of enemies. This was something else. When Elias finally noticed her, his eyes widened. He struggled to sit up, then stopped when the pain returned. "You should rest," Carvella said. Her voice was low, careful, as if she feared speaking too loudly might break him. Elias gave a small laugh. "You sound like the doctor." Her lips pressed together, unsure how to respond. She stepped closer, stopping at the side of the bed. Up close, she looked even more imposing, but her eyes were different now, unsteady. "Why did you do it?" she asked again. Elias thought for a moment. "Because someone had to," he said simply, "and because you came here unarmed, that matters." No one had ever said that to her before. Carvella straightened. "Among my people, laying down weapons is seen as weakness." "Among mine," Elias replied, "it's sometimes the bravest thing you can do." The medical officer cleared their throat and gestured for Carvella to step back. She obeyed, though every instinct told her to stay. When Elias fell asleep again, she remained. News of the attack spread quickly through the conquered spire. Some delegates demanded an investigation. Others accused Carvella of staging the event. Old fear was hard to kill, but something unexpected happened. Human representatives spoke. They were not loud or threatening. They simply stated facts. A human civilian had been injured protecting a guest under conquered law. That guest deserved safety. Anything less would make the station meaningless. The tone changed. Security increased. Patrols doubled. Quiet arrests were made. The message was clear. This was no longer just about Carvella. It was about what kind of future the galaxy wanted. Carvella spent the next cycle walking the station corridors alone. For the first time in her life, no army waited for her orders. No enemies planned against her strength. There was only silence and thought. Her memories shifted back to her youth. She remembered her first battle, how she had trembled and how her mentor had told her fear was a tool to be crushed. She remembered victories that earned her praise but cost her pieces of herself. Over time, the path narrowed until only war remained. The ancient law of her people echoed in her mind, the path of binding. A warrior chosen by strength alone would never know peace. Only one chosen by compassion could end the cycle, but that choice had to come freely from another species, someone unbound by their blood. Until now, no one had ever stood before her without fear, except a human logistics officer with no weapon. She stopped walking. For the first time, Carvella felt afraid of hope. Elias recovered faster than expected. Humans, it turned out, adapted well to non-lethal energy exposure. By the third day, he could sit up without help. By the fifth, he insisted on walking. Carvella was there when he took his first steps. "You don't have to keep watching me," Elias said gently. "I'm not going anywhere." "I know," she replied. "I am." He looked at her confused. "Going where?" "Forward," she said. "If I can." They began to talk after that. Not as warrior and civilian, not as legend and newcomer, just as two people from very different worlds. Elias spoke about Earth, about crowded cities and quiet nights, about mistakes humanity had made and lessons it was still learning. He did not hide his species' flaws, and that honesty surprised her. Carvella spoke less, but when she did, her words carried weight. She spoke of duty, of victories that tasted empty, of soldiers who followed her without question because they knew nothing else. "Do you regret it?" Elias asked one day. She considered the question. "I regret that I was never taught another way." That answer stayed with him. Outside the medical wing, tensions rose again. Several alien factions pushed for Carvella's removal. They feared that her presence, even changed, would shift power balances. A council vote was scheduled. If she lost, she would be forced to leave the station under guard. The talks would end. Old wars might begin again. Elias attended the session, still weak but determined. He sat among the human delegates, his posture straight. When Carvella was called to speak, she stood alone at the center of the chamber. "I was forged for war," she said. "That is true, but I stand here unarmed by choice. If you remove me now, you prove that fear decides fate. If you allow me to stay, you choose possibility." Silence followed. Then a human delegate stood, then another species. Slowly, voices rose, not in anger but in agreement. The vote passed. Carvella remained. That night she sought out Elias on a quiet observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass. "My law is real," she said without turning to him. "Soon it will demand an answer." Elias swallowed. "And what does that mean?" "It means," she said softly, "that once feared by many, I may soon be forced to kneel before one." She finally looked at him. "And I do not know if I am ready to ask." Elias met her gaze, heart heavy, understanding at last that what he had stepped into was far larger than either of them. Above them the stars burned on, watching, waiting. The conquered spire felt different after the vote. The halls were quieter but not calmer. Whispers followed Carvella wherever she went. Some were curious, some were fearful. A few were hopeful, though no one said that word aloud. For the first time in many cycles, Carvella did not wear armor at all. She walked in simple dark clothing, her hands empty, her posture still proud but no longer rigid. Every step felt strange, as if she were learning to move again in a body no longer built only for war. Elias noticed the change immediately. "You look lighter," he said as they walked together along a wide corridor filled with soft blue light. She tilted her head. "Lighter? Like you're not carrying an army on your shoulders," he explained. She considered that. "I still carry them," she said quietly. "I always will, but perhaps they no longer carry me. They stopped near a transparent wall that overlooked docking traffic. Ships of many shapes drifted in and out, peaceful for now. Carvella watched them and felt a tightness in her chest. "My people believe that a warrior's worth is proven by obedience," she said. "They follow me because I have never questioned the path." "And now?" Elias asked. "Now I question everything." That truth frightened her more than any battlefield ever had. As the summit continued, pressure began to build from beyond the station. News of Carvella's presence spread across the galaxy. Old enemies watched closely. Some prepared for war, fearing this change was a trick. Others feared what it might inspire among their own people. Inside the conquered spire, security alerts increased. Nothing happened openly, but tension pressed against every conversation. Elias returned to work, though he stayed close. He reviewed supply requests, evacuation plans, and emergency procedures. Quietly, he adjusted systems to protect civilians first, no matter what might happen. Carvella noticed. "You prepare for disaster," she said one evening. "I prepare so it doesn't happen," Elias replied. That answer stayed with her. The ancient law grew louder in her thoughts. The path of binding was not just tradition. It was biological, cultural, and spiritual. When a warrior reached a certain point, the choice could no longer be delayed. If ignored, the consequences were severe. Her people believed it was the universe demanding balance. Carvella had reached that point. She could feel it. That night, she summoned a private council of her closest remaining officers via secure link. Their faces appeared in the air before her, hardened warriors, loyal beyond question. "You stand without armor," one said carefully. "That troubles the ranks." "I stand as I choose," Carvella replied, "and I will speak plainly. I intend to step away from command." The reaction was immediate: shock, anger, confusion. "You cannot," another officer said. "The fleets exist because of you." "Then they must learn to exist without me," she answered. A heavy silence followed. "At dawn," she continued, "I will make a public declaration. No forces will move. No threats will be issued. Anyone who breaks this order will answer to me personally." They did not argue further. They never did. The link faded. Carvella stood alone in the dim chamber, her hands trembling slightly. This was harder than any battle she had fought. She needed to see Elias. She found him on the observation deck again, staring out at the stars like before. He sensed her presence and turned. "It's time," she said. "For what?" he asked, though part of him already knew. "For the truth." She told him everything. The path of binding, the ancient rule, the choice that could end her role as a weapon or lock her into it forever. The requirement that the choice must come freely, without fear or reward, from someone outside her species. "Why me?" Elias asked softly when she finished. "Because you stood before me without knowing who I was," she replied. "Because you chose to protect, not to win. Because you see me, not the legend." Elias looked away, overwhelmed. "This isn't fair," he said. "I didn't ask for this." "I know," she said. "That is why it matters." Alarms suddenly echoed through the station. Red light washed over the corridor. An unauthorized fleet had entered the outer perimeter. A rival faction, long enemies of Carvella, had taken advantage of the unrest. They broadcast a single message across all channels: "Surrender the warrior or the station burns." Panic spread instantly. Delegates rushed for shelters. Security forces scrambled. The conquered spire had defenses, but they were not designed for a full assault. Carvella closed her eyes. "This is my fault," she said. "No," Elias said firmly. "This is fear reacting to change." She turned to him, eyes fierce. "If I step forward as I was, they will retreat. They fear the legend." "And if you do?" Elias asked. "Then the path will close," she replied. "Forever." The choice stood before them, raw and immediate. Carvella walked to the center of the main assembly hall. Broadcast systems activated automatically. Her image filled every screen on the station and beyond. She stood unarmed. "I will not fight you," she said to the attacking fleet. I will not threaten you. If you fire, you will prove that fear rules you. If you leave, you prove that the galaxy can change." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then energy signatures flared. Elias watched from the control center, heart pounding. A single shot fired not at the station but near it. A warning, a test. Security officers shouted orders. Systems braced. Carvella did not move. She slowly, deliberately lowered herself to one knee. Gasps echoed through the hall. Before the entire galaxy, the warrior who had never bowed. Her voice remained steady. "I will no longer lead through fear," she said. "I place my fate in the hands of another." Cameras turned. Elias felt every eye in the galaxy find him. Carvella looked at him across the distance, her expression open, vulnerable, real. She did not command, she did not demand. She waited. Outside, the enemy fleet hesitated. Inside, time seemed to stretch thin. Elias took a step forward. The galaxy held its breath. Elias Rowan felt the weight of the galaxy settle on his shoulders. Every screen in the conquered spire showed the same image. Carvella, the feared warrior, on one knee, unarmed, waiting. Outside the station, hostile ships held position, weapons charged but silent. Time moved slowly. Elias took another step forward. He was not a leader. He was not chosen by prophecy or power. He was a human who once thought his greatest responsibility was moving supplies on time. Now millions watched to see what he would do. Carvella did not look away. Her eyes did not beg, but they were open in a way Elias had never seen before. She had given up control. That alone was more powerful than any weapon. Elias stopped a few steps in front of her. He spoke quietly, but the microphones carried his voice everywhere. "I don't know your laws," he said. "I don't know your paths or rituals, but I know one thing." He took a breath. No one should be trapped by who they were forced to become. A ripple passed through the chamber. Elias looked around, then back at her. "You don't need someone to own you, command you, or decide your future," he said. "If your path ends today, it should end because you choose peace, not because I choose power." Carvella's hands trembled slightly. "That is enough," she said softly. "Say no and I will accept it." Elias shook his head. "I'm not saying no," he replied. "I'm saying something different." He reached out, not to lift her, not to bind her, but to offer his hand. "I choose to stand with you," he said. "Not above you, not over you, beside you." Silence filled the station. Then something changed. Carvella felt it deep within her body, like a tension snapping after being pulled too long. The path of binding reacted, not with pain, not with force, but with release. She exhaled sharply. The ancient mark on her armorless skin, faint but always present, faded like mist in sunlight. Across distant systems, her fleets felt it too. The pressure they had lived under their entire lives lifted. They did not panic. They stopped. Weapons powered down. Orders ceased. For the first time in their history, the war fleets waited without fear. Outside the conquered spire, the hostile faction detected the same shift. Sensors showed Carvella's forces disengaging. No counterattack formed. No trap unfolded. Confusion spread through their ranks. Their commander broadcast again, voice uncertain. "What have you done?" Carvella stood slowly. "I ended something that should have ended long ago," she said. "If you fire now, you will be the only ones choosing destruction." Minutes passed. Then one by one the attacking ships turned away. Cheers did not erupt. No one celebrated loudly. The moment was too heavy for that. Instead, something quieter happened. Relief. Delegates lowered their shoulders. Security forces stood down. Across the station, beings who had lived with fear for generations felt something unfamiliar settle in. Hope. Carvella turned fully toward Elias. "I am no longer bound," she said. "Not to war, not to command, not to legend." Elias smiled faintly. "Then what are you now?" She considered the question. "A learner," she answered, "if you will allow it." Elias nodded. "We're pretty good at learning, terrible at it sometimes, but we keep trying." That made her smile, a real one, awkward, unused, but honest. The days that followed reshaped the galaxy in small but lasting ways. Carvella formally stepped down from supreme command. She did not dissolve her people's defenses, but she restructured them. Protection, not conquest. Aid, not fear. Many resisted at first, but the absence of the ancient pressure changed everything. Without it, they could finally choose. Some left military life entirely. Some stayed. All were free. The conquered spire became a symbol, not of power, but of transition. Historians would later argue over treaties and outcomes, but everyone agreed on one thing. A human had changed the course of history without firing a single shot. Elias returned to his work, though his role quietly expanded. He advised, coordinated, and listened. He never claimed authority he did not need. Carvella stayed close, not as a guardian, not as a weapon, but as someone discovering who she could be without war shaping every thought. She asked questions constantly. Why do humans value stories? Why do they forgive so easily and fail so often? Why do they protect strangers? Elias answered honestly. Sometimes the answer was, "We don't know, we just try." That seemed to satisfy her. One evening they stood together again at the observation deck, stars stretching endlessly before them. "My name was once a warning," Carvella said. "Now it feels like a beginning." Elias looked at the stars. "That's usually how it goes. The end of one thing feels scary because it's the start of something better." She nodded slowly. "You chose me," she said, "not as a ruler, not as a symbol. That changed everything." "I didn't choose you," Elias corrected gently. "I chose what you were trying to become." Carvella accepted that. She had learned that humans often spoke that way. Far away, children on distant worlds would one day hear stories about the feared warrior who knelt, and the human who refused to rule her. They would not remember fleet numbers or battle names. They would remember the lesson. That strength did not come from fear. That power did not require domination. And that humanity's greatest weapon was never its technology or armies. It was the courage to see even the most feared enemy as someone who could still choose peace. Once feared by many, the warrior alien woman stood freely beneath the stars. And beside her stood a human who proved that sometimes choosing kindness reshapes the entire galaxy.